I, Chair Chris Beyer, call the Board of Boiler Rolls meeting of June 2nd, 2020 to order at 9:32 a.m. Debbie, you already took roll.
No, Chris, I'll go ahead and take roll again, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chairman Chris Beyer,
Here.
Blake Alexander,
Present.
Thomas Engstrom,
Present.
Roger Hendricks,
Present.
Kenneth Hill,
Present.
Patrick Lamb,
Present.
and Greg Moyer. We may have him connected shortly, but at the present time he is not connected. But Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum, and I'm going to identify staff too. We have Thomas Clark, who is our boiler program chief. Thomas?
Good morning.
Good morning. And Alana Cox, who is the manager of policy and technical services. Alana?
Good morning.
And Tyler Glaze, who is our policy analyst for the board. Tyler? Morning, Tyler. Tyler? Did have him a moment ago.
Good morning.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chair, you can go ahead and begin the meeting.
Okay, after reviewing the agenda, does anybody have any changes? Hearing none, I, Chair Beyer, roll the meeting agenda in order of business approved. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to the draft minutes from December 3rd, 2019? Hearing none, I, Chris Beyer, roll the draft minutes of December 3rd, 2019 final. So, announcement, our next scheduled meeting is September 1st, 2020. At that meeting, we'll probably be taking vote for vice chair position. So just a heads up, if any of you are interested to take that on, that would be great to start considering. Do we have any public comments?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this is Tyler Glaze, policy analyst with the division. I do not believe we received any public comment, but if we do, I believe it will be addressed as soon as we can.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Clark, would you like to give us an update?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
The last time this board met was January 21st, and quite a bit has changed in our world since then. So I'd like to start with the program update. Kind of talk a little bit about how the program has addressed COVID-19. So I'd say our approach, in summary, has been to be flexible and accommodating to both our inspectors and our customers out there. We have been allowing inspections to go overdue due to customer concerns or a customer's inability to complete the inspection, or because inspection agencies are not comfortable putting their inspectors in the field. The state program has been operating as normal, but with social distancing requirements and covering requirements per CDC guidelines. Another thing we've done to try and help our customers who are affected by COVID is that we have been waiving late fees for renewing permits. We understand that some businesses are completely shut down and unable to pay for their permits. So we've been waiving those late fees and allowing them to re-up their permits when they're able. Through for new installation inspections, but we've actually been getting quite a bit done on the in-service inspection side. Things like there's a lot of businesses that are open but not open to the public, so they're eager to have something to do, and getting inspections done is a good use of their time. So despite the situation, we've still been getting quite a bit done. And when we've had time to kill, we have been able to take advantage of the situation, and we've gotten a lot of training and program improvements done. One project we've been working on is revising our O-stamp quality control sample manual. So it's been good for our program. One thing that I know multiple board members have asked about is expiring boiler licenses. All boiler-related business and individual licenses were due to expire on July 15th. The division has temporarily adopted an administrative rule, 918-030-3005. That temporary rule will extend all licenses to January 15th, 2021. So that should give our tradespeople a good bit of room to get up to date on their continuing education and get their license renewal applications in. That CE will still be required though, and one thing we're doing to help with the continuing education is we've put a notice on our website that any CE courses that have already been approved by you, the board, can be given in an online format as long as the content does not change and it's still given by an approved instructor. So hopefully that'll make it a bit easier for our license holders to get their CE done. More information about that method and other approaches we've taken to help people with COVID-19 can be found on our homepage, which is oregon.gov/BCD, as in Building Codes Division. Moving forward, an update mostly for the board is code adoption has been delayed until next year, just due to everything that we have going on and the number of meetings that would be required to make a code adoption happen. The advantage to that, though, is that with the 2021 codes coming out next year, we may be able to adopt them and be caught up to date on codes for the first time in a long time. So we'll have more on that to come. Looking to overdues. Overdues are trending upwards, as would be expected in this period. The state has moved up to 17%, which is up from 14% overdue in February. Average overdues across all agencies are up to 21% versus 19% in February. Conservatively, I would expect these overdue numbers to stay fairly steady in the next few months as we progress through the governor's phases of reopening. And once the state's fully reopened, we should hopefully start to see those numbers drop. And the last thing I have for my program update, we discussed multiple times last year during program updates that the state had a vacancy. We were down an inspector. We were able to hire a new inspector, Dwight Kohler, in January. Dwight is a Navy veteran of over 20 years who served as a warrant officer in the nuclear propulsion program. Dwight was able to pass both his Oregon competency exam and his national board commission before the pandemic started, which is great. We're able to have him out there getting inspections done. He's been a really great addition to the team. It's typically tradition for the chief to introduce new inspectors to the board. So hopefully next time we're able to meet in person, Dwight can attend so that you can all meet him.
Hey, Tom.
Mr. Chair? Yes.
This is Greg Moyer. Hey, what area does he have?
Oh, thanks. That's a good question. Dwight covers southwestern Clackamas County, I would say, or sorry, northwestern Clackamas County, and he also covers the east and north sides of Portland in Multnomah County.
Okay.
And contact information as well as details on what areas our inspectors cover can also be found on our website. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for now.
Very nice, thank you. Okay, says we have no communications, no appeals, no unfinished business. Let's go into new business.
The sound is all on.
Excuse me, what?
I'm sorry. Nothing.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to hear. So going into new business, Tom, would you like to go through this?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk you through this. So hopefully everyone has a copy of both the memo and the proposed rule wording. If not, or for those of you listening in at home, if you go to our homepage, oregon.gov/BCD, in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a list of upcoming meetings. At the top is this meeting, Board of Boiler Rules, and right below that is a link to the agenda and board packet that will contain the current agenda and all the documents that we're going to be discussing today. So, if everyone has this document in front of them, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I think that's a waste of time, but I'll kind of summarize the memo and give you some background on where this is coming from. So we received, I would say, somewhere between 5 and 10 requests in the last year from customers who are looking for formal permission to delay their internal inspection beyond the due date. As many of you may be aware, there aren't necessarily any consequences or fines or fees associated with going overdue on an inspection, but many customers need more than that to feel satisfied going overdue. They want to minimize their liability. They want to satisfy their legal team, so they look to us for formal permission to go overdue on their inspection. As the memo notes, Oregon Administrative Rule, Chapter 918, Section 225-0570 sets our inspection schedules. And right at the beginning of that section, it does very clearly say, unless granted special permission by the division, the following inspection schedules must be met. And that, in the past, has made it seem like the division can just go ahead and approve extensions however they want. But we reviewed this policy last year and realized that we don't really have any clear criteria for allowing extensions or changes to the inspection cycle. And as the board is the authority that establishes these inspection cycles, we felt that really wouldn't be appropriate for us to be granting extensions. So with multiple customers, we have informed them that we can't grant such an extension and suggested that they bring the issue to the boiler board. Depending on how you look at it, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the board, the timing has never worked out for anyone to bring it to the board's attention just because of the delay between when the meeting would happen and when it was brought to our attention. They wouldn't be able to bring the issue to the board before the inspection already went overdue. So that's why this has happened numerous times, but it hasn't been brought to your attention yet. So what we are looking into with this rule is finding a way to address these customers' needs without worrying about the delay of bringing it before the board and without adding significant amount of business to board meetings, because you could potentially see 1 to 2 of these requests every meeting if this is how we would handle it going forward. So the purpose of the rule is to establish criteria for us to receive, review, and approve requests for extensions to internal inspection cycles. It would also set the frequency for how often people can apply for extensions, how long the extension can last. It also directs us to track applications and approvals. That way we can make sure that the system isn't being abused and people aren't extending every year, effectively creating their own inspection cycle permanently. This rule would also help guide us to know what kind of equipment would be eligible for an extension and help guide us with what information is needed to verify that it would be safe to extend this inspection cycle for the customer. It also helps make sure that the inspector is involved, the inspector who is responsible for the equipment, be that a state inspector or an insurance inspector. One, because that inspector is going to have a good history with the equipment and will have a better idea of whether or not it's safe to extend the cycle than, say, I, as the chief, would, having no experience with that particular piece of equipment. And the rule would also direct them to perform an inspection using alternate inspection methods before the due date, the current existing due date, to help ensure that it is safe to extend. And our intent is to have customers apply for this using a web-based form that would require additional documentation as well as the signature of a company representative and the signature of the inspector assigned to the equipment. Two very important things to note. One is that this is not for all internal inspections, and it's not for all overdue inspections. This rule is specifically aimed for customers looking for formal approval. It's not for example, let's say a dry cleaner owner who, due to scheduling, can't get their inspection done until a couple days after the due date. This is not for them. This is for large companies where their equipment is run 24/7, is critical to their process, where it will cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to be shut down, and they need to plan an outage, and they can only get their outage done within 6 months of the original due date. The other key thing to note is that this is not a permanent extension. This would be designed to be a single extension that can only be granted every 4 years. I believe there are some customers out there who are interested in the idea of having an 18-month cycle permanently for certain types of equipment. We feel that's a separate issue. We welcome them to bring that issue to the board. But what we're looking to do here today is more for emergency type situations or unique one-off situations. We're not looking to create a permanent extension.
Hey, Tom?
Yes.
So the extension says that it'll be for 1 6-month period every 4 years. Is that,
correct?
Let's say if they have 5 different boilers there, is that going to be for each boiler or just a one-time deal? Period.
This is written and aimed at being granted for single pieces of equipment. So if they have multiple pieces of equipment they want to extend, they would want to write up separate applications for that.
So they could do separate, like if they had 5 different boilers, they could essentially do every 5 boilers separately.
Yes, they could do them separately, and I believe they would need to. If you look into the rule, part of that 4-year requirement is not just to prevent people from making their own inspection cycles, but also to help make sure that we've established a trend of safe history. And it gives us enough data. Having 4 years, that means 4 different internal inspections, so that we can really safely prove that this equipment is holding me in a safe condition and that it would be okay to extend it for 6 months. So we would really need individual applications because the individual condition of each boiler could be wildly different depending on,
Right.
on the type of boiler and how it's been operated.
Yeah, okay. Well, then the next line where it says extensions shall only be granted for large-scale steam boilers and hot water boilers. I wish we could kind of narrow that down to be more specific because I personally think you get a dry cleaner person and to them, that's their large-scale boiler, you know, and they may try to run this by the board, you know. I wish we could get it down to be more specific if we could.
Well, one of your 3 options for this item is to amend and approve. So if the board is interested in amending this wording, that would be fine. I will say that the reason we went with that wording was because we felt power boiler was a little too specific, and that eliminated some equipment that could potentially otherwise meet this criteria. The key word, I think, in that line 1B is continuously operated and critical to the business or organization. It's pretty clear that the intent is for boilers that are operated 24/7, and if they're not operating, you're losing money. A dry cleaner can definitely argue that the item is, a boiler is critical to their operations, but it is not
Right.
continuously. And there's no reason they can't shut down for 6 hours once every year, whereas shutting down a boiler at a power plant or another large facility requires a lot more than 6 hours and can be a huge impact on business.
Yeah, okay.
Question from Ken Hill, through the chair, Tom. I work for a pulp and paper company. We've been on an 18-month cycle for our chemical recovery boilers. There's only 5 chemical recovery boilers in the entire state of Oregon, and I think most of them are on 18-month cycles. I've been on 18-month cycles for maybe up to a decade. Our business plans are all put together going forward in the future. So how is this going to be addressed? I heard you say that's a different issue for the board, but many of the pulp and paper companies right now are already set into this cycle. Prior to this, we've just asked the chief directly. Anyway, that's how it's been handled, and we're right in the middle of an outage cycle.
Yeah, I'm aware of how previous chiefs have handled the situation. And as I mentioned towards the beginning of our summary, when we looked at that approach, we felt that was the incorrect approach and that we needed to take another look at how we handled that. That the chief didn't necessarily have the right approach there because while 918-225-0570 says the division can grant special permission, it doesn't give us any clear guidance or criteria to do that, and so it left it entirely up to the chief's discretion. And we felt that, one, that doesn't necessarily help us ensure proper safety, but 2, it also does not really help us ensure that that is done fairly and equally, because chiefs change every few years, and how each person looks at that when they're not given criteria can be different. So
I understand that. This rule needs to be on some sort of implementation schedule, because you have businesses that already have a business plan working on what you've done in the past. So to automatically implement this could mean a significant change, and maybe probably impossible for some companies to change in midstream.
have a firm date for implementation. Another thing to look at, though, is that if we don't implement this, then with our current understanding of how 0570 works, is that we would then be sending all those customers who are asking for an extension to the board. We're not going to approve extensions on our own as a division without clearly defined criteria. So it's going to be different for those businesses going forward no matter what. Either the division can continue handling it with established criteria, or we can send them to the board. But we are not going to be approving any such requests without defined criteria and authority granted through a rule through the board.
Beginning when?
That's already been in effect. I have not been approving such things. We had a few customers come to us and they showed us documentation that previous chiefs had done such, and we made it clear that that would not be the case going forward, because those rules very clearly establish the inspection cycle, and how some customers got away from the 12-month cycle onto an 18-month cycle, I don't know, but it's not in accordance with the rules. And without that criteria to do it, to define how we're going to grant extensions, we can't fairly or safely grant extensions to customers moving forward, and we haven't been for some time.
Okay.
So Tom,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I need to remind the board members to identify themselves when speaking, please.
yes ma'am, thank you. Tom, this is Chris Byer. Would it be safe to assume that if we did not approve this new role criteria, that it would actually impact the businesses more, because we only meet 4 times a year? So if these requests were to come to the board, that could be bad, right?
Yes, it could, because as I stated earlier, most of the times when these requests come in, we know that they're going to be going overdue before the next board meeting, and many times they would just miss that. So businesses would either have to be prepared to take their case to the board before their overdue date, and you as a group would have to be prepared to see multiple cases a year, possibly multiple cases a meeting. Or if we can adopt this rule, you would be granting that ability to the division, and we can handle it in a much more timely manner. And as I said earlier, making a permanent extension to 18 months is a separate issue. If the board wants to address that issue, or if customers want to address that issue, I welcome that. But this current issue is looking at a more temporary option. It's not meant as a permanent option. This is for unique situations, not for a normal operating procedure.
Yeah.
Through the chair, this is Roger Hendricks. Hey, Tom, I have a couple of questions. First of all, if this does get approved, would the chief, being you at this time, have the final rule on whether or not an extension is granted? That's my first question.
So yes, I would be performing the review, and the inspector assigned to the equipment, be that insurance or state, would also be involved. And there would be a signature line for them on the application form saying that they are comfortable with this and they recommend approval. So they would be involved as well. And then if for some reason I denied an application for whatever reason, they would be able to, just like with any other ruling the division makes, they could appeal to the board.
Okay. And then the second question is line item 4, talking about the inspections required prior to a extension. It looks like this is basically just a safety net built in to ensure that we're all comfortable with the soundness of the boiler, and that we're comfortable with granting the extension, and this is basically just a second precaution saying we think in the 6 months that nothing is going to happen until we can get the internal inspection done. Is that kind of why that line 4 is built in there?
Yes, that is why that's there. In fact, most of the companies who have made this request in the past already have all this information ready to go and have even provided some of it to me in their prior request. This is just a way for us to ensure that when we say you can go for another 6 months, that we're really justified in doing so. That the equipment is safe and we have ways to prove it without opening it up. So, Mr. Chair, if there are no other questions, your 3 options at this point are to either vote to adopt as presented, you can vote to amend and adopt, or of course you can decide not to adopt at all, or you can table the discussion and come back to it at a later meeting.
This is Ken Hill again. Question back on the 18-month cycle for large industrial customers. At what point do we plan on addressing that?
You can address that whenever you like. If you want to bring something before the board, I know there are other customers who are interested in a permanent 18-month cycle for certain types of equipment. So you could connect with them and maybe make some sort of proposal to the rest of the board as soon as the next meeting. But I don't have anything prepared for that today.
Okay.
This is Greg Moyer through the chair. Ken? Yeah. Ken, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, I know that Georgia Pacific wanted this extension, and I think this may have been like, them and maybe you guys had triggered this whole situation about this 18-month thing. Now they haven't been on an 18-month schedule. They've always gone down every year and has done their internals. Because I've got 3 black liquor boilers. I got 2 at Toledo and 1 at Juana that I deal with. But they're probably going to be on board about possibly doing an 18-month cycle like you guys are doing. I'm sure that they'd be way on board on that.
I know Halsey's on an 18-month cycle, and typically we go down, all the mills go down halfway through it and do a water wash. But, just a visual from the outside.
Right.
Yeah, that needs to be addressed. We're not in that boat ourselves, but I know that Halsey is this year, looking to get an extension. So, but yeah, in the past, I guess we're disappointed to change the way we do business without providing notices to customers. I think that's not a very good way of doing business.
But one of the I've always had this concern since I've been an inspector in this state. Whether the inspection gets done or not, everybody will have a current permit as long as they pay for their permits. There was since this COVID thing started, there was, I've always been working. I have not been sent home. We felt that it was essential on getting the inspections done. There was a couple places that denied me entry. So what I had to end up doing is I had to send them a letter. And I'm going to read to you what this letter says. It says, the message is to confirm your decision to allow the vessel's jurisdictional operation permit to expire and the safety inspection to not be completed at this time. These jurisdictional inspections are required to satisfy the regulated certificate date to maintain your vessel's operating certificate. Continued use of your equipment past its operating certificate due date is at your own risk. We are required by jurisdictional rules and regulations to notify the jurisdiction of your decision to delay your inspections. And then there's another line that says, when you allow me to come back in to get a hold of me. Well, I kind of felt bad about sending this out because in this state, that statement is a lie. But I thought it would scare people into letting me in to do the inspections, because out here, like I said, whether I come in and do the inspection or not, they're going to have a valid operating permit, which to me, that's not about the safety, you know? That's what really bothers me about this state.
Well, we should just move forward and vote on this. Again, by the way, Debbie, go ahead and move forward with the agenda.
Okay. If nobody has any further questions, can I hear a motion for one of the options?
I may say the motions are available on the help sheet if you need help.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the proposed rule for rulemaking?
I'll make a motion. This is Greg Moyer, through the chair. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
This is Ken Hill. I'd second that motion.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll do roll call if the motion is fine.
Thank you, Debbie.
Greg Moyer,
Yes.
Patrick Lamb,
Yes.
Kenneth Hill,
Yes.
Roger Hendricks,
Yes.
Thomas Ingstrom,
Yes.
Blake Alexander,
Yes.
and Chair Chris Beyer.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously.
thank you all. All right, moving on. Tyler Glaze, would you like to go through the continuing education stuff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Tyler Glaze, Policy Analyst for the division. If you look at Agenda Item 7B, we had, for this round, we had 10 applications for continuing education from 2 organizations. 1 course was recommended for approval, 5 courses were recommended for denial, 2 instructors were recommended for approval, and 2 instructors were recommended for denial. Those applications are in your packet, so if you have any questions, feel free to direct them to me. Otherwise, this will require a motion, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, this is Roger Hendricks.
Yes,
Tyler, I had a question on the denials.
Yes, sir.
I said on the review committee, And most of my responses that I sent in were pending because there was just some incomplete applications. Were the providers unable to complete those applications in time for our meeting, or did other people reviewing recommend for denial?
Mr. Hendricks, yes, the first situation is correct. Unfortunately, unless we can get the information necessary before the meeting and get it out to the committee to review, we have to deny them the applications. So basically, unless the committee has approved unanimously prior to the meeting, they have to be denials.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted some clarification.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the committee's recommendation for approval or denial of courses and instructors?
This is Roger Hendricks. I'll make a motion to approve the committee's recommendations for approval or denial of courses or instructors.
Can we get a second?
Greg Moyer?
This is Blake Alexander. I'll give it a second.
Greg
Thank
Moyer?
you. Yes.
Patrick Lamb?
Yes.
Kenneth Hill?
Yes.
Roger Hendricks?
Yes.
Thomas Ingstrom?
Yes.
Blake Alexander?
Yes.
And Chairman Chris Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Debbie. There's no announcements. So, being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 10:14 a.m.